You're with The World Today on BBC News, and as we've been reporting, Joe Biden's news conference at NATO is happening at the end of a three-day alliance summit that's being held in the US Capitol. The talk again focusing on Ukraine, with members there pledging their support for the country to join the bloc, saying it was on an irreversible path to membership. So let's talk about what we've heard with regard to Ukraine at that NATO summit. Michael Boychukov is in Odessa, and is a senior fellow at the Washington, D.C. based Atlantic Council think tank, also a former spokesperson for the OSCE, that's the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Thank you for being with us. And I want to start first of all with what we've heard. It's just been a three-day summit there at NATO. We've discussed a lot of it overshadowed by the questions over Joe Biden, but significant developments as far as Ukraine is concerned. Talk to me about whether what has been delivered is in line with what was expected of this summit.
Good to be with you. Well, I think Helena and Tom laid out pretty well what came out of that summit, but you know, from all the conversations I had with a wide variety of people here in Ukraine today, from shopkeepers to members of parliament to heads of NGOs, is I think the best way I can sum up what came out of NATO, especially the so-called bridge to membership, is finally Ukrainians can feel their footing on an actual bridge. The problem is they can't see the light at the end of that bridge because the wording is so vague. And you know, I have to say, after that strike on Monday on Kyiv and other big centers, including the Children's Hospital, one would have thought that would have been a red line or a trigger to NATO leaders to really take even more action. Look, we're sitting here today where Ukrainians still have one hand tied behind their back. They cannot use US-supplied missiles further than a prescribed distance. Those F-16s you mentioned are still not in the air. They should have been by now, and there's a problem with training. On the other hand, minimum of 40 billion euros a year have pretty much been guaranteed, but we don't know for how long. And also the other thing that should be mentioned, China was called out for helping Russia execute this war through the back door. So it's really a mixed feeling, but I think the most important thing for Ukrainians right now, again, off the back of Monday, is, for heaven's sake, protect our skies, because no inch of Ukraine feels safe right now.
Yes, and I know you were in Odessa, that itself was subject to attacks once again there yesterday, wasn't it? I was talking to one of our colleagues, a Ukrainian colleague in the newsroom, telling me she's in touch with families there that say, look, they understand the need for mobilisation, more troops to go to the front line, but at the same time they feel helpless. There is no alternative. We know that they have to report at 17, even though conscription is only at 25. But there is no alternative to ending this war. The frustration that people are feeling there in Ukraine about the relative helplessness of Ukraine in the face of Russia, and quite how damaging that is when we see what's happened in NATO and the time it takes for those supplies to get to where they are needed.
Yeah, there is a huge frustration. And, you know, as for mobilization, of course, they need more younger men at the front line. I can't remember any other war where basically it's being fought with men whose average age is 40 years old. And, you know, if you go a few kilometers away from here to the beaches and whatever, they're packed with young men of fighting age. So it's a very sensitive topic here, and it's something that President Zelensky is grappling with. But the sense of frustration, I have to say, is right now, with the lack of power and without the lack of internet and data. We had today temperatures been pushing up to 40 Celsius. And these days, there's more hours without power than with. So it's very difficult for people to get anything done here. And ironically, you know, Ukraine now is one of the most digitized countries in the world. The problem is a lot of those transactions that go through, you know, the digital pipeline require electricity. And that just isn't there right now. People are wondering, is this a trial run for winter when the demands will be even greater? And if it is, there will be a mass exodus of people out of here because they won't be able to heat their homes. There could be a humanitarian disaster in the making. It's not a very good scenario here right now.
And briefly, because time is tight, I wonder, we've been having that conversation there about President Biden's future and what any potential change at the White House would mean as far as Ukraine is concerned.
Well, it couldn't be worse. If Mr. Trump gets in, Ukrainians are very fearful that, as he said in that debate, that he'll try to make a deal with Putin even before inauguration. And the feeling here, of course, is it won't be in Ukraine's favor. That's why it is good that NATO leaders, European leaders are rushing up against the clock to Trump-proof and future-proof aid to Ukraine with that 40 billion euros and other means. So that is very welcome here.
Michael, we're really grateful for your time. Thank you for being with us there, Senior Fellow at the Washington, D.C. based Atlantic Council think tank, joining us from Odessa. Thank you.
Thank you.